Hello, my beautiful peeps out there. How are you guys doing on this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Thursday? Even though it's raining, but it's okay. I apologize, guys, that I am late today. But that's okay. That's okay. Hold on one second. And I don't own the rights to this music in the background. But I am jamming. How y'all guys like my new wig? My little wig. It's the first time I had a wig that, I have a little bang. I'm rocking it. I always switch up, guys. If you know me, you know that I switch up. I do. I switch up, guys. But how you guys doing on this beautiful, beautiful Thursday? I'm going to say it's beautiful, even though it is raining, but it's still a beautiful day. It's still a beautiful day out here. I know some of you guys are at work, and some of you guys can't see my live, but that's okay. You can always go back and watch my live. But today's topic is very, very member. I apologize, y'all. I feel like every family member needs to talk about this. And I feel like in our race, we don't talk about this. We don't. Every time you try to bring this subject up, people be like, no, I don't want to talk about it. So today's topic is about, do you have yourself in order? And what I mean about that, do you have your shit together when God tell you, hey, your time is up? Because a lot of times people don't have their stuff in order when it's time for them to cross over. And then they leave their family, lost. So we're going to talk about that today because this topic needs to really be talked about. And I hope, the ones out there that is listening, I hope you make, an appointment or date or whatever to get with your family member and sit down and discuss that, because this really do need to be talked about. So we're going to get started. We all seem to find it difficult to have a conversation. We have to open up and talk to loved ones about, hey, what do you want when you pass away? How do you want things? We have to learn how to talk about those things, because we don't talk about those things. I know when I was coming up, my family members, my grandmother, my father, my mother, we didn't sit down and we didn't talk about that. Farther along, me and my mom, and my sister had a discussion about that. But before, coming up, we didn't have a talk, we didn't sit there and we didn't talk about, what happens if we die, what you want, this and this and that, and I feel like it's time for us to break that curse and sit down and talk about that, because I feel like that is the biggest key that breaks up a lot of family. When it comes to death, I feel like that breaks up a lot of family members. It does. So we're going to talk about that today. And if you want to tune in or request to, come on and explain, the experience that you went through when, you lost someone, your loved ones, and how it broke everybody up. You're welcome to always come on my podcast if you want to talk about your experience. I'll give you that. Why is death difficult to discuss? We avoid conversations about death and dying because we feel frightened of what we may hear. Because a lot of times people are afraid to discuss death. People are afraid to talk about that. But I feel like as you get older and you're starting to lose a lot of your loved ones, I feel like it should be, you should learn how to be comfortable to talk about death. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about death. We shouldn't, death shouldn't be something that everybody is afraid to talk about, because it has to You know, you have to sit down and you have to talk about it, because everybody is going to make that transition. You know, everybody's going to do it. You know, but at least if you sit down with your family members and you talk about it, at least y'all have an understanding. Like, if you do pass away, at least you'll know to yourself, hey, they know exactly what I want. You know, so it should be no different commotions or anything like that. What to keep in mind before starting a hard conversation. I'm going to read, you know, and this is my opinion on, you know, on this. You know, everybody feels different. You know, you might feel like, hey, that's not a discussion that I want to talk about. You know, I'm not going to talk about that. Hey, that's up to you. You know, that's how you feel. You know, I can't change the way you feel. But I just feel like that is the biggest key that breaks up a lot of family members, you know. So, what to keep in mind before starting a hard conversation. You have to be meaningful with the conversation about death and dying. You want to plan to discuss your loved one finance, their opinions on major end-of-life decisions. That's just like if you have a family member that is dealing with cancer and they don't give them long to live. You know, you have to talk about those things. You have to ask that person, you know, what is their wishes? You know, what things that you want to do, what things you want to say. You know, you have to talk about those things. And I'm going to shout out a couple people. Hello, my beautiful cousin, Roy. I love you too, sweetie. And congratulations on your baby, having a baby. Congratulations. Hello, Martha. How you doing? Hello, Chris. How are you doing? Are you still in the hospital? Are you doing good? But you have to, you know, you have to talk about those things. Another thing, consider their needs. A lot of times people don't want to first talk about those things, and then another time, you know, some people might do talk about what the things that they want, and a lot of times people don't consider their needs. You know, a lot of times people just look at their self, but you know, sometimes you got to say to yourself, it's not about you. You know, you can't be selfish. You know, this is their life. This is what they want. This is their wishes. You know, so, you know, if you're in a conversation with anybody, any of your loved ones, and if your loved ones, you know, want to discuss to you about, you know, what they have planned for if they ever, you know, transit, you know, you got to sit there and you got to listen. You know, don't cut them out and say, well, I think you should. Don't do that. You know, allow them to tell you, you know, their needs. Another thing, ask pointed questions. You know, you need to ask, you know, questions, especially if you have parents that's, you know, is up in the age, you know, and even if, you know, I could say 50, you know, we have to start asking, we have to start telling our family members, you know, the things that we want or whatever. And then also, you know, you gotta, you know, the ones that their health is declining, you know, you got to ask them what's their concern. You know, what do they want to do? Do they want to be on hospice? You know, do they want to die from home? You know, you got to ask those questions, you know, and then you got to create a trust space for them to have these conversations. You know, you can't come on to a person real hard when it comes to a conversation like that, because everybody's emotions is going to be high. You know, nobody wants to talk about death, you know, but we have to talk about that. You know, that should be one thing that we shouldn't shy away from. And I found that, you know, our race, you know, I feel like a lot of people shy from that. A lot of people don't want to discuss that. But I feel like that is very, very important to discuss. Why is it important to talk? Being able to talk give us all the opportunity to share any worries, fears, or wishes that we have. You know, it's very important to talk, you know, especially, you know, I feel like, you know, you need to talk about those things, especially if you have young kids. You know, you need to find out, who you want to raise your kids if anything happened to you. You have to think about those things, and, I just feel like that's very, very important, because a lot of family members they split apart because of death. They do. And that's true. Nobody can't sit there and say that shit don't happen, because the shit does happen, guys. It does happen. It really does. Because we're so afraid to talk about it. But we need to talk about it. How we can help. I'm going to give y'all a few things that maybe, that it can help you. You can write down the questions and you can ask them these questions. And hopefully, they'll answer those questions and tell you what is what. One, where they want to live if they could no longer be independent. That's another thing. A lot of our family members, parents are much older now, and they're getting to the point that some of them cannot live with each other. So you need to ask that, because it's a lot of, especially if you have a large family, large brothers and sisters. If it's a lot of you, y'all all have to sit down and discuss that, hey, our mother or our father is getting to a certain age. We need to find out why they're in a good state of mind. Where would they like to live? What child would they like to stay at? That they feel, that's where they want to be. You got to have that discussion. That's why a lot of times people, get into it and have a disagreement because one family member wants to put that person in a nursing home and the other family member wants to have that person home with them. So it's good to sit down, and that's one of the questions that you need to ask, where do you want to live if you get to the point that you're losing your independence. That could be anything. You can have a stroke or anything. You're going to need somebody to, be with you to help you go through that process. So that's one of the biggest questions that you do need to ask your family members. Two, what they like to happen with their house. Another thing is what do they want to happen to their house, their car, or any of their personal items? You need to get that out, because especially if you have a large group, in your family, if you got a lot of brothers and sisters, that needs to be discussed, because a lot of parents do leave behind a lot of things, cars, houses, boats, anything. They do leave a lot. They leave money in their accounts. They leave a lot, So you need to sit down and discuss that with your brothers and sisters. If your parents are still living, all of y'all need to sit down and have a meeting and sit down and discuss those things, like who gets the house, who gets the car. With the money, I feel like the money should be split between everybody, but it's their decision, that needs to be talked, because if they feel like they just want to give to the money to a certain, child, that needs to be discussed, so it won't be no misunderstanding, because a lot of times, that is the biggest thing that do break up family members, is when it comes to financial or it comes with their personal items. Three, spiritual and thoughts concern the end of life, like cremation of a barrel. That's the biggest thing that people need to talk about, because time is different now. A lot of people wants to be cremated now, and that is the biggest thing that people needs to sit down and they need to discuss that. It's your choice, to make a decision. What do you want them to do with your body? It's your choice. I feel like nobody should make that choice for someone. So if you want to be cremated, you need to make sure you let your kids know, or your mother know, or whoever. You need to inform them that is your wishes to be cremated, and then also you need to inform them that you want to be buried. It's a lot of things that you need to sit down and talk about when it comes to that. Let me see. So the next thing I am going to talk about is how do you prepare? You know, a lot of times people don't know how to start to prepare, you know, their death or when they're in the process of dying. They really don't know how to start, you know, start to prepare. So I'm going to give you guys, let me see how many I have. I have 6 things that I feel like that will help you to start preparing. 1, complete a living will or write it on paper and get it notarized. If you feel like you don't want to do a will, that's fine. But at least write it down on a piece of paper of your wishes. And if you know someone that get it notarized, make sure you notarize it. Make sure you sign it. Make sure they sign it. So it won't be no miscommunication. Let me slow down. No misunderstanding between each other or the family members, you know. Because once you have that, no one can go against your wishes because you have it written down or you have it in a will. So remember that. 2, gather important documents and contact information. Make sure you have a person that you feel like you want them in charge of everything, even if you know, say for instance, if you're married, you know, make sure you let your husband, because a lot of times men don't get into all of that, you know, so they leave that information with their wife to deal with. But make sure you inform your husband if you're married or your wife. Inform them of all of the insurance policies that you have on the family. Make sure all, you know, you show them where all the documents at, you know, your deeds to your house, you know, make sure you give them all that information so they don't have to go searching or wondering, do you have this, you have that. They'll know where to get the information. Make sure you put it in a spot that they know, you know, put it in an envelope and write on there, hey, if anything happened to me, this is all the documents, the information that you need to know. You know, so make sure you do that. That's very, very important. That's very important. 2, gather important documents and contact information. I just said that. Okay. 3, put in place a power of attorney. If you feel like you have, this is for parents. If you feel like you have a lot of kids, you need to make sure who you want to put power of attorney. You know, if you want all of your kids, you know, as power of attorney, you do so. You know, because one thing about that, let me see, let me read a question and then I'll go back to that. Let me do some shout out, guys. Let's see. Hello, my beautiful Melissa. Hello, my beautiful Alice. Alice. Miss Alice, I'm sorry, sweetie. Let's read a question. Melissa's wrote, this is a very valuable information. As hard as death is, it is important. Thanks for the sharing. Yes. It's very, 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 very important to talk about these things. And like I say, you know, it's very important to have someone power of attorney. You know, me working in the medical field, a lot of hospitals do stick by that HIPAA law real bad. And, you know, a lot of times when people be admitted, they give them a HIPAA form signed. And a lot of times we don't read everything, but you have to list the people on that HIPAA form who you allow to, you know, give, you know, make decisions or talk to, because a lot of these hospitals, if your name is not on that HIPAA form, a lot of times they won't like release information or they won't make you, you know, let you make decisions or whatever. You know, it all depends on certain hospitals or whatever, you know, so make sure, you know, you leave power of attorney of everybody that's, you know, who you want over your stuff. You've got a lot of kids, put them, you know, put their names on each one of them so, you know, each one of them can make that decision together. 4, consider a living trust. You know, if you got a lot of money that's in your bank account, you know, make sure you do a trust fund. You know, if you got small kids, make sure you set that up with the bank, enlist the kids. So at least you know that your money in the bank will go directly to the people that you want to go to. So make sure you do that. 5, update your beneficiary, like, on your job, update it. Make sure they got the names, and all of that. Make sure you get all of that in order. Because, when it comes to that, your insurance policy, they're only going to release the money to that person that's listed on there. So make sure you have all of that taken care of. And then also, too, make sure you have in your, say, for instance, if you're married, and your wife or your husband wants to leave a certain amount of money to the kids or whatever, make sure you have that in writing. So the person who's, head of the, of your policy or whatever, they know to split that. This is what he wants, or this is what she wants to give out. You got to get that, understanding all of that. So now I'm going to switch it. Why do families split after death? A lot of family break up after death. A combination of the highest emotion, financial strain, and grief cause a lot of anger and misunderstanding. That is the biggest key. A lot of times people misunderstand each other. Because when you lose a person, your emotions is so high. It is. It's so high. It's so much tension between brothers and sisters. It is. It's so much tension. And those negative thoughts or those negative, things that you're seeing, it would trigger you. It would trigger you to have those negative thoughts, to come to your brother or your sister, in a, mean way. A lot of times people get misunderstood. A lot of times they do, because our emotions be so high, we're not taking the time to think about others, others' feelings or whatever. We don't. You ain't never, let me see what somebody says. Okay, this is my cousin Roy. He said, you ain't never lying, cuz I've seen it firsthand. Yes, that is so true. Can a death in a family ruin a relationship? Grief can destroy a relationship when both individuals fail to take the necessary step to work through their grief together. Yes, they do. I have witnessed so many people, family, that have broke up because of death. Death brings on so many different emotions. So many different emotions. Cause especially for one, if you're dealing with a person that passed away, that was murdered. You have so much anger inside of you that you don't realize that you're attacking your brothers or your sisters, or your parents, because it's so much emotions inside that you're not really completely thinking, and I feel like a lot of outside people play a big part on that. A lot of outside people, because a lot of times people is not really focusing on their family. They're more focusing on these people outside of their family. It's giving them so many negative thoughts, so many things, they saying, and then it's like, oh yeah, you're right. But you're not thinking, because I feel like when it comes to family, brothers and sisters, yes, true. You don't have to like your brother and you don't have to like your sister. You don't. You don't have to, because everybody has a different type of relationship in a family. A lot of times mothers have their pets. They do. A lot of times mothers have their favorites. They don't like to admit it, but it shows. So, of course, a lot of brothers and sisters are going to have that type of, type of not liking that person because they feel like that person is getting all the attention. They feel like their parents is always taking up for them. So, you know, it goes, you know, when it comes to death, it goes like that. You know, you get those negative thoughts in your mind. But you got to remember, you know, as brothers and sisters, y'all have to come together and realize that it's not about y'all feelings. It's not about your feelings. You know, and I feel like people, you know, a lot of times when a person passes away, say for instance, if a person passed away today, one of your family members, you know, your immediate family, this is what I'm talking about, passed away today. First thing we want to do is, oh my God, the funeral, the next day, the funeral. We don't even take a moment to breathe and understand what's really going on. We don't. You know, we get people coming to us and say, well, what you going to do about the funeral? What you going to do about this? What you going to do about that? What you going to do about that? They're not giving us a moment to say, oh, wait a minute. Can I just have this moment, this one day, to just take this in before I make any decisions? Just breathe. We don't do that. We don't. We rush the process. We shouldn't have to rush that process. We should be able to take a moment to ourselves just to breathe, to soak that in, to realize that we just lost a loved one. You know, and a lot of times we don't take that moment. We don't. You know, that's why we make decisions when, you know, we make decisions so quick, you know, not realizing decisions that we're making, that's not good decisions, you know. And I feel like if we don't sit down and talk about the things that we want when we pass away, or the things that we want if we at the last moment of our life and they give us so many months to live, we don't want to talk about those things. We want to brush those things under the rug. We want to stop and say, no, I don't want to talk about that. But those things need to be talked about. They need to be talked about. Because right now, today, they have a lot of sisters and brothers, or just brothers, that don't even talk to each other anymore after their parents passed away. You know, and that's not right. You think your parents would be, you know, their soul will still be at peace when they knowing down here on this earth that their kids are at each other because of materialistic things? Because one wants to go this way, the other wants to go that way. You cannot work like that. You can't. You can't be selfish. You can't think about you. It's not about you. And a lot of times people get caught up because they thinking about themselves. You can't do that. When you lose a loved one that's close to you, it's not about you. It's not. Because trust me, if you have brothers and sisters, y'all all are feeling the same way. Y'all are. Y'all feeling the same way. You know, so it can't be about you. It cannot be about you. Somebody has to be the bigger person and say, hold up. We all got to sit down and we have to talk about this. We have to find out what is our parents' wishes. You know, you have to sit down and you have to talk about these things. You know, you have to ask you have to tell your husband or your kids, hey, you know, this is what I want. These are the wishes that I want. You have to sit down and you have to sit there and discuss those things. Stop being afraid to talk about death. Stop being afraid. Death is going to happen. It's going to happen. So you cannot be afraid to talk about those things. You know, just like if you got small kids, you have to find out who you want to raise your kids if you pass away. Those things need to be talked about. So you know that you can be okay, especially if you're on your dying bed. You know that you can be okay because you made the right decision of the person that you want to raise your kids. You don't want your kids to go to other relatives that you feel like, no, my kids don't know them. So you have to sit down and you have to talk about those things. You have to say, hey, if I pass away, that's just like for me. I'm not afraid to talk about death. I'm not afraid to talk about that. My friends are afraid to talk about that. They always brush me off. They always say, Keisha, I don't want to talk about that. But I let them know, and when I lost my father and I had to go through the process of burying him, my dad actually have 2 daughters, but he also have 3 stepdaughters that he considered as his daughters. When it came to me to make a decision of unplugging my dad, to let him go, I wasn't going to be selfish and just think about myself and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I didn't do that. Because you can't be selfish. You can't just think about yourself. Especially when you have brothers and sisters, you can't be selfish. You can't. You have to give your brothers and your sisters an opportunity. And that's what I did. I called every last one of them. And like my sister, my oldest sister, she lives far away. She couldn't be there. But I had 3 other sisters that could have been there. I gave them an opportunity to be there. I gave them a time. But it's up to them to make the decision if they want to be there or not. And if they didn't get there at that time, then I made the decision to go ahead and let him go. I did that. That's just like when it came to the barrel. I did exactly everything that I knew, and my dad told me what he wanted. He wanted to be buried in his cowboy boots. He wanted to be buried in one of his suits. I made a decision that, hey, we all need to go to the funeral home. We all need to sit here and pick out the coffin. Which one do you feel that our father would like? I did that. You have to be an adult about the situation. I didn't allow my feelings of what I felt to take over. I didn't do that. I allowed my sisters them to make a decision, to be in part of the decision. I did that. And that's where it comes when family members separate. Because you have this one person wants to take over and make the decision knowing that they got brothers and sisters that are allowed to make those decisions also. If your parents or if your husband or your wife don't have anything written down, I'm gonna say parents that have kids. I'm gonna use this example for that. If your parents don't have a will or don't have anything written down of the decisions or the wishes that they want, you as a child that has brothers and sisters, you cannot make those decisions yourself. You cannot do that. As long as you still have brothers and sisters, they're allowed, just like you're allowed, to make decisions. And that's where a lot of family members break up, because it's one person that wants to take control, don't want to hear any of their brothers and sisters' advice. They want to go on and say, well, I know what mother say. Okay, yes, you do know what mother said, but we don't know. Mother never had or father never had that discussion with us. So how can we go by what you saying, what mother want? You can't do that. Y'all have to sit down at a table You know, that's when it comes to being a real adult. If you claim that you is a real adult, that you can handle adult things, you should be able to sit down with your brothers and sisters and discuss, hey, we need to discuss what we want to do with mom or dad. Let everybody put their input. I don't care if one person say, hey, I want to get a yellow flower to put on mama. You allow that brother, that sister to put that yellow flower on their mom. You don't stop them and say, no, we're not going to do that. That's not what. No, you don't do that. Because right there, you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking it's about you. It's not about you. It's about your parents. Because you got to remember, your parents raised all of y'all together. That means that if your parents don't have a will or written anything down, your parents feeling that y'all can sit down and make a decision. Because when you have to bury a person or a loved one, it shouldn't be that hard to come together. It should not be that hard. Only time that is hard because you're being selfish. You're thinking about yourself. That's why it's hard. You got to remember, when you have a large family members, you have to sit there and discuss it. Because trust me, some brothers and sisters going to tell you, hey, sis, I trust your judgment. You handle it. So that means they're out of it. They gave you their approval that whatever decision you make, you can make. I approve of it. But the ones that feel like they want their input, they're going to give you their input. If y'all all can't come to a conclusion, y'all sit there and y'all think about it. But don't sit there and be angry at each other, cursing each other out. You going your separate ways because you're letting your wife or your husband interact and tell you, oh, well, you need to do this. Well, you need to do. Don't do that, because it's not about you. It's about your parents. I have seen and I have witnessed so many friends that are brothers and sisters or sisters and brothers are not talking to each other. Because they're allowing the outside people to take control of their thoughts. You cannot do that. You cannot. Your parents will want you to be separated and not talking to each other. You know, how do you keep a family together after death? 1, you talk about the person who died. You got to talk about your loved ones. You got to have a moment to talk about them to special brothers and sisters. Y'all got to talk about it. Y'all got to get it out. Because one thing about it, y'all all are feeling the same pain. You know, you have to talk about it to come closer together. You know, if y'all don't speak to each other every day, that's understanding. But try to do better, you know. Try to at least send each other a text now and then just to check on each other, you know, because we all have our own life that we're dealing with, our own situations, but you don't want to lose, you know, contact with your brothers and sisters. To tell stories, just like I said, you know, express everything. You know, and, you know, sometimes it's okay to change the tradition. It's okay to do that, you know. I'm going to give you my experience of, you know, a situation, you know, dealing with, you know, death, you know. With my mom, it's just me and my sister. It is. My sister had a conversation with my mom, you know, about death. What did she want? You know, my mom told my sister that she wanted to be cremated. Me and my mom had that conversation also. She told me that she wanted to be cremated. You know, as parents feel like you know, if they pass away and they have a lot of items that's left behind, they just feel like their kids will, you know, come to agreement and they wouldn't have that, you know, argument that, you know, separate, you know. As parents, you know, that's what you think. You know, you don't think that your kids are going to just be torn apart after you die, you know. Parents don't think that way. So, you know, going through the process, my mother did not have a will. She did not, you know, she did not have a, you know, power attorney over her. She just figured that me and my sister will come together and make a decision together. And going through the process of my mama dying, it was hard. It was very, very rough, you know, because my sister had her own emotions and I had my own emotions, you know, and a lot of times, you know, our emotions that we have in, you know, it brings in, you know, a little negative thoughts, you know, we have questions, we have, you know, things that we want to answer, we're angry at the doctor, you know, we just angry. So our emotions are so high, you know, so, you know, me and my sister, you know, we experienced, you know, I felt that, you know, by me being the youngest, the baby girl, and she was the oldest, it's like, you know, by her being the oldest, she felt that she should make all the decisions, you know, and it's like when I got ready to say something, it's like she shut me down. So, you know, I was feeling some type of way, you know, I was like, you know, my feelings are hurt, you know, I'm talking to my husband, I'm talking to my good friend, you know, and I'm like, you know, my feelings is hurting, you know, I feel like I'm being shut down, you know, that, you know, every time I say something, my sister's like hushing me, you know, hold up, you know, I'm not a little girl, you know, I'm a grown woman just like her, you know, my emotions was high. So, you know, I had to say to myself, okay, I need to talk to someone that will give me a good, positive outlook to show me to look at it in a different way. So I have a friend that is a reverend, and I trust his judgment. And I called him, you know, and I asked him, hey, you know, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling like, you know, every time I say something, my sister is like shooting me, you know, just and that. So he explained to me, you know, hey, Keisha, you know, your emotions are high. Her emotions is high. How about you just sit down, you and your sister talk, you know, you discuss to your sister how you're feeling inside, and she'll express how she's feeling inside. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So that's what we did, you know, me and my sister sat down and, you know, I told her, hey, you know, I understand that you're my older sister, but, you know, I can speak on it. I can express my opinion. You know, don't hush me. You know, when the doctors come in, don't do that. You know, and she apologized and she's told me, you know, sis, I am so sorry. You know, my emotions so high. You know, to see Mama sitting there, you know, laying there, you know, and I wasn't thinking about your feelings. You know, I was just, you know, it just made me think that, you know, I'm a school teacher and I'm used to telling the kids to hush, you know, and I apologize. And we got through that. You know, we had an understanding. We got through that. So then when we had to go to a decision of making a decision to let my mom go on her own and cross over because, you know, our parents know what child will be the strongest. You know, and I knew that I was the strongest. You know, my sister, she's strong, but I knew I was real strong. So I decided to, you know, we rotated that she, you know, she's there, you know, in the daytime, and I'll come there, you know, be there at the nighttime. But, you know, that whole week, I told her, hey, sis, I got this, you know, I'll be here all day or whatever. So by me being there all day, you know, I am experiencing a lot of stuff what my mom is going through. Like a lot of shit, y'all. Like a lot of shit. You know, and it was just bringing me like going back to the experience that I felt with my father, you know, but it wasn't as, you know, dramatic with my father. You know, it wasn't like how my mom was. It's like I experienced my mom, you know, of them bringing my mom back to life. You know, I experienced that twice, you know, and it got real rough on me, real rough. And it's like I had a lot of anger inside of me, real bad, you know, and I was just saying to myself, you know, I can't just keep watching my mother go through this. It's time for us to just let her go, you know. So that was a big thing, a big challenge that God put for me and my sister, a big challenge. So, you know, I had to call my reverend friend and I had to tell him, like, hey, you know, I broke down to him and I told him, I said, hey, you know, watching them, you know, put the thing on my mom, get on top of her, pumping her, bringing her back. I was like, it's a lot. It's too much, you know, watching my mom suffer like that. I said, we got to make a decision. I said, I know my sister is not ready for that, you know, and I don't know how to go to my sister, you know, to tell her, hey, you know. So he walked me through it, you know. He told me, you know, the things that, you know, I need to say for us to sit down. You know, and I did, you know. I went to my sister and I said, sis, you know, I know it's hard for us to let go our mother, you know, to let her go. I said, but sis, by me sitting here experiencing this, going through this, seeing them, you know, bringing her back, I said, it's a lot. I said, in my heart, I feel like God is calling her, but we're holding her because we're being selfish, because we don't want to let her go, you know. And my sister, she was like, sis, you're right. You know, I am being selfish. You know, I'm not ready to let mom go, but you're right. You know, we can't be selfish. We know it's time. You know, it's nothing else they can do. We got to. So we came to that decision. And I know my mother will be proud of us because we didn't let that situation tear us apart. Because if we allowed the devil to tear us apart, we would have separated. We would have separated because we would have said things that we didn't mean, because we were so like angry. We were so thinking about our feelings. We was being selfish. We didn't allow the devil to take control, you know. And we came to a decision to let her go on her own. And it was a blessing. It was beautiful. You know, that it was beautiful. My mom transition was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And when it came to the funeral part, you know, me and my sister, we had to take that in, you know. The next day, we just had to, you know, take a moment for ourselves. You know, we wasn't ready to talk about, you know, what we was going to do, you know, what was what. We had to take a moment, you know, before we discussed those things. And then when we got to that moment to discuss the things, you know, we was comfortable of, you know, cremating my mom. You know, we knew the things that my mom wanted, the things that our mom wouldn't like. You know, we knew that. We knew that our mom wanted a private ceremony. She didn't want everybody. You know, she just wanted the close family members, you know, her close friends there. And we respect that, you know. And then we had our own little ideas that we wanted to do, you know. We had our own little thing that we wanted to take care of. Like my sister say, hey sis, you know, I want you to take care of the obituary, you know, get that together. You experienced that. You know, I don't think I can do that. I need you to do that. I took over that. You know, we had our different things that we wanted to do, and we came together as a family. You have to come together as a family. You have to. You know, you have to sit there and do it together. Nobody should be selfish. You know, nobody should just worry about their feelings. It's not about your feelings. It's not. You know, and I had a discussion with my kids, and I had a discussion with my friends, you know, and my husband, you know. And I always say to myself, if I ever passed away, that, you know, if my kids was younger, who did I want to, you know, who would I want to raise my kids? And I had those people. It was going to be my sister, Lisa or Rancia. It was going to be out of those three that I feel that that's the ones that I wanted to raise my kids if I ever pass away at a young age and I had younger kids. I made that decision. Just like, my family, my friends know I want to be cremated. I don't want to have my body in no casket. I don't want anybody to see me because that's not me no more. That's just a body. My soul is gone. I don't want my family members to sit out and pay all that money and make the funeral home people rich. No, ma'am. I don't want that. No, I don't want that because it doesn't take all of that. It doesn't take all of that to have a funeral. It don't. A lot of times people go all out the way to have a funeral because they just want to do a showboat. A lot of times, a lot of funerals is just showboat. But you don't have to have all of that to say goodbye to your loved ones. You don't. You don't have to have that extra. Because for one thing, especially if you have family members don't have any insurance policy and all of that, why waste all that money? Why make the funeral home people rich off of you? Why do that? And then when you turn around the next day, you're struggling. You're wondering how you're going to pay this, how you're going to pay that, especially if a loved one left a lot of bills or whatever. So don't showboat, when it comes to a funeral. It doesn't take all of that to have a beautiful celebration. And that's what it's about. It's about a celebration. It's not about to do a show to show that, I did this and it's not about that. And that's where people get caught up, if it's a certain color that you want your closest family to wear, say that. Don't let other people choose the certain color you want to wear. They're going to choose the color that they feel that's good for them. So you got to write all those things down, like certain songs you want to play, because my thing, I feel like your funeral, it should be the things that you want, not the things that other people feel like that's what you want. So we have to stop, in our race, stop being afraid to talk about death. Stop being afraid to talk about death. Don't be afraid of that, because we have to break the curse of stop allowing the devil to break up family members. We have to stop that. And the biggest key is because family members don't sit down and discuss about death. Everybody wants to shy away from it, don't want to talk about it, but you need to talk about those things. You need to talk about those things. I have every song that I want, them to play. I have a song for all my homegirls. I have a song. I have everything listed, what I want. So it won't be no miscommunication. I have the pictures already that I want for them to choose. I have all of that. So they don't have to have a misunderstanding of what they want to do. Just like with my personal items, my clothes, I know who I want them to give my clothes to, all of that. You have to sit down and you have to sit there and you have to talk about those things, because I feel like once you sit down and you talk to your family members, your kids, your parents, when you sit down and talk about that, everybody has an understanding of what their parents want or what their kids want. Just like my daughters, they already told me the things that they want. I don't know about my baby girl. She really haven't discussed, which I have to ask her, do you want to be cremated or do you want to have a funeral of having a casket? I already know my husband wants to be cremated. My daughter wants to be cremated. We talked about those things. Like I told my husband, even though that I make the decision about me being his wife, but I told him, to make sure you let your parents know that you want to be cremated, because I will respect his parents, if it's certain things that they want to include, I will respect that. But, I just wanted to be clear on their part of why he's being cremated, so it won't be no misunderstanding or anything. You have to talk about those things, you know, because once those things are discussed, nobody shouldn't feel no type of way or anything, because everybody should be on the same level, you know, on the same level. So, you know, try to sit there and talk about those things. And then also too, for the ones out there that have brothers and sisters, y'all not talking to each other, you know, because what went down in the funeral, you know, the process of the death or whatever, y'all need to sit down and talk to each other, you know, because a lot of times, you know, people allow the outside people to interrupt, you know. You need to sit down and you need to talk to your brother or your sister. You know, y'all need to sit down and y'all need to talk about things. Y'all need to apologize to each other of the different, you know, things that y'all said about each other. Y'all need to do that. Y'all need to work things out, you know, because a lot of times if you sit there and get everything out, a lot of times it just be a misunderstanding between each other, you know. So try to at least reach out to your brothers and sisters to sit down and discuss that. At least you can get, you know, everything out how you feel. If you feel like, you know, hey, right now I don't want to be in their space, but I still love you or whatever, at least y'all have that understanding with each other, you know. Sorry about that. But at least y'all have that, you know, understanding about each other, because, you know, it's enough that you lose your loved one. It's enough. But losing your family, your brothers and sisters, you know, that's hard. You know, that's hard, you know. And because one thing about it, especially when you're losing your parents, y'all both are feeling the same way. You know, and you shouldn't have more tension of losing each other. You shouldn't have that. So just remember, if you lose a person, take a moment to have your moment before you jump into deciding what you're going to do when it comes to the funeral part. You know, and then realize it's not about what other people going to think, what other people should see. It's not about them. It's about the person that passed away. If your mother or your father is a private person, keep it private. You don't have to invite everybody in the world. Keep it intimate. You know, because one thing about it, you're supposed to celebrate their lives. And that's what it's supposed to be, a celebration. You know, that's what my mother's celebration was. My mother would be so proud of me and my sister, so proud of us. You know, even though we had the devil trying to attack us, you know, we had people make comments and say, oh, that's not what their mama wanted. Oh, you know, they didn't think about nobody else, whatever. But it wasn't about anybody else. It was about our mother. And I feel like me and my sister did a beautiful job of celebrating our mother. You know, and that's just like the experience that I had with my cousin Gussie. You know, I was there of her family going through the process of planning her funeral. I stepped back. I didn't interfere anybody. You know, I didn't try to tell anybody, y'all need to do. No, that wasn't my place. You know, and it was beautiful because they allowed her daughter, you know, her daughters to make that decision, the things that they wanted for their mother. And it was beautiful. You know, it was small, it was intimate, you know, because they knew that their mama was private. You know, I just made sure on my behalf to make sure everything was beautiful. And that's what I did. You know, that morning I got up, I was with my homegirl, Rancia, you know, and I'm big about sage. I burned my sage, y'all, in good deeds. I told the funeral person, I said, hey, you know, I know nobody probably never did this before. I said, but I am getting ready to burn my sage. I'm going to burn it over her casket. I said, because nothing but good, positive energy is going to come in here. I said, because we already know the devil already working. You know, and everybody's emotions was high. Everybody had some anger. You know, but I burned that sage because it was about her. It was her day. And I made sure every little teak flower was pretty, everything. And I told them, look, because I knew that that was my place to do, because her family members are already dealing with their issue, getting themselves together, making sure they in a good spirit to walk in there. So I wasn't going to bother them with that. I took upon myself to go up there to make sure everything was in place. And I did that. I did that. You know, I was very disappointed in the funeral homes. You know, I was very disappointed in that funeral home that they did not have her together. That's why I say, you know, spending all that money, making them rich, don't do that. Don't do that. You know, I had to make sure her hair was right, you know, I had to make sure she was together, and I did that. And her service was beautiful, you know, and I know she was looking up. I mean, looking down to us, saying thank you. Everything was beautiful, you know. So that's what you have to do. You know, you got to come together, you know, because one thing about it, when they're dead and gone, they don't know what's going on. They just praying to themselves that their kids would do this in a good, positive way. You have to. You have to. And outsiders, don't get involved. Don't get involved. You know, I understand you might have your opinions, this and this and that. Don't get involved. You know, you be the bigger person. You just listen to them vent. But don't get involved, because when they going through something, losing somebody, their tensions are high. You know, and another thing too, if you have a sister or brother that is the main person that's taking care of their parents, you know, don't come in and feel like you need to take control. Don't do that. Allow your brothers and sisters to sit down and y'all all talk about the things. You know, that's why people have to sit down and discuss those things. You have to. And another thing, you know, I understand if you're married, you know, and this is my opinion, as a wife, if you lose your husband, you know, and their parents, their mother is still living, you know, allow their mother to at least put their input or something that she really wants to do for her child. Allow that mother to do that, because for one thing about it, she is the mother. You're just the wife. You know, I don't care if that mother just want to, you know, do a flower, you know, or say a certain word, or sing, or do something, you know. Allow that mother to, you know, to at least, you know, do that one thing for their child. You know, I don't care if you and that mother don't get along, y'all don't speak, but allow that mother to have some kind of, you know, like, hey, could you just please just put these shoes on him? You know, I know this was his favorite shoes, you know. allow that mother to do that, because that's one thing about me. If my husband ever passed away, I will allow his mom to, suggest, hey, Keisha, I want this certain type of flower. Could I have this one flower? I'm going to allow her to, to do that, because that is her child, that is her child. So, that's where it comes that, you don't be selfish, you don't be selfish. And, ooh, Lord have mercy. Sorry, y'all. Sorry about that. Ooh. Sorry, y'all. Sorry about that. But I'm going to burn my sage, which I forgot to burn my sage in the beginning, because I love to burn my sage before I get started. But I'm going to burn my sage now. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I burned my sage the last time and I didn't realize I burned my nail. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Don't be afraid to talk about death. Don't be afraid to talk about death, because when a person do cross over, it's about a celebration of their life. And that's what it's about, celebrating their life. And if you did lose someone, take a moment for yourself that day. Don't jump into the decisions. Don't do that. Let yourself take in what's really going on. You don't have to rush. You don't have to rush. And also remember, don't go broke of, trying to please people with this funeral. Get everything in order. If a person don't have an insurance policy, try to save up money, to, help with the funeral or whatever. And my thing is, if you don't have enough money, if you got to raise money for a funeral or whatever, you don't have to always, get the casket and all of that. Don't try to break yourself coming up with $5, $6, $7, $8, $10,000 to bury somebody. It shouldn't cost that much money to bury somebody. If you don't have that money, make a decision to cremate that person. It's nothing wrong with cremation. It's nothing. Because for one thing about it, their body is there. Their soul is gone. Because a lot of times when you do bury a person, people don't go back and visit their loved ones. They don't. They don't go back to visit their loved ones. So why waste all that money? Why go in debt of spending all of that money? Why do that? Time change. I know back in the old school, everybody had a funeral and all of that. But at that time, at that moment, funerals wasn't that expensive, because I know when I buried my daddy, it was like $5,500. It wasn't that expensive. But now, funeral homes are making a profit off of us. If you really think about it, you wind up, you have a funeral, you're paying $10,000 for a funeral. It doesn't take that much money to have no funeral. Like I told my husband, don't you dare. The most that you better spend is about $2,000. I'll give you $3, not even that. Don't you dare. You don't need to go out and do all that. No, I don't need all of that shit. I don't need all of that. All I want you to do is celebrate, and I want y'all to have a good time, and I want y'all to party. Play music. You can go all out with the food and all that. You can do that. You can spend that money on that food. But instead of giving a funeral home $10,000, none of that. They won't get my money. Because one thing about it, I want to leave enough money that, to be split between the kids and my husband. They can live, comfortable. My husband paid a house out. I'm looking at that. I'm not looking at giving somebody $10,000 to bury me. For what? My soul is gone. I'm dead and gone. I don't want you to be in debt. So you got to think about that. You got to be smart. A lot of times people get caught up in the materialistic things. They want to do this. They want to do that. They want to do that. If you don't have the money to do that, don't do that. Don't do that. It doesn't cost a lot of money to have a beautiful service. Like my mom's service, the most that we ever paid, probably like $2,000. That's it. That's it, guys. And everything was beautiful. I was blessed. We was blessed that my Uncle Michael, he arranged the food. It's beautiful when you have people who will put in to help you with different things. So don't try to go overboard, because it doesn't take much. Because one thing about it, that person laying in that coffin, their soul is already gone. They just waiting for that body to deteriorate. And like I say, a lot of times people bury their family members, they don't even go back. I say after 2 years, they don't even go back to visit. It might be now and then, you know. And the beautiful thing that I love, the fact that my mom is cremated. Each one of us have a part of my mom. You know, I have a table set up. You know, my mama's ashes is right here with me, you know. So that's the beautiful thing, because every day she's with me. You know, it's not like I have to go to a funeral home, you know. I don't feel like going, I mean, not a funeral home, to a grave site. You know, my dad is buried in a grave site, you know, and I don't go every day, but I do go out there, but it's not every day, you know, that I go out there. So, you know, you got to think about those things, you know, and make sure you sit down and you talk to your family members, you know, about when it comes to death, you know, so everybody could be on the same page. The kids could be on the same page and all of that. But I really appreciate for you guys to tune in, and don't forget to hit that share button. And then also too, for the ones out there that if you're back against the wall, you got so much pressure, you're overwhelmed, you know, you just don't know what direction to take. Whatever you do, don't give up. Please don't give up. Life is precious. You know, God is going to work things out for you. He's going to help you go through the things. All you got to do is just try to change your mindset. Get those negative thoughts out of your mind and try to put in positive thoughts. Be thankful for the things that He do, you know, that you do have right there in that moment. Be thankful for those things. But if you feel like, you know, talking, that's getting too hard, check yourself into somewhere to give your mind a break, to, you know, you overwhelmed, you know, try to talk to a therapist, you know, try to get yourself some help, you know, because life is hard. You know, we do have a lot of pressure on us. All of us experience different things in life, you know, but you can't let the devil win. You know, and one thing about it, you got to keep your faith. Faith is so important, guys. It's so important. Please keep the faith, you know, keep the faith. You know, sometimes, you know, we want things to happen right then and there. It doesn't work like that in life, you know. Things is not going to happen right then and there. But as long as you keep the faith, and as long as you keep on pushing, God is going to help you. God is going to bless you. The things that He know that this is part of your life, you know, because a lot of times people don't realize our life is already planet for us. We just have to do that job, you know, and you got to stay positive. If He knock you down, remember, you can always get back up and keep on pushing, you know, so don't give up. Keep pushing. Life is hard. Yes, it is. But as long as you keep the faith, and as long as you change your mindset and bring in positive thoughts and hang around positive people, you're going to be okay. And then also for the ones that have lost someone this week, I'm burning my sage through this whole process because I forgot to burn my sage in the beginning, guys. Because you know I like to burn my sage in the beginning to bring in positive energy. So I'm doing it now. For the ones that's out there that have lost someone this week or a couple months, whatever you do, don't stay there at that sad moments. Change those sadness to happy. You know, think about, you know, your family member, you know, the ones that you lost, you know, post pictures of them, talk about them. You know, that's one thing about it. When someone passes away, you know, don't stop talking about them. You know, bring up those positive moments that y'all had with each other. Post pictures of them, you know. Don't be afraid to express how you're feeling inside. Don't be afraid to express that. You have to learn how to get those feelings out. Because a lot of times we keep those feelings balled down inside, and all that does is continue to have negative thoughts in your mind. So remember, teach yourself to learn how to get that out. I know some of you guys don't like to express your feelings. Y'all don't like to express that. But learn how to start expressing your feelings. Get that shit out. Get it out. You know, get it out. You got to release it. You have to learn how to release it. And one thing, you know, I always tell you guys, give someone a hug out there. Everybody deserves a hug. Give someone a hug. And you don't have to say much or whatever. Just hug that person, because you never know, that person needed that hug. You know, and I really appreciate all you guys for tuning in. You know, and I hope I touched someone today. You know, and remember, get your shit in order. Get your shit in order. Let your family members know exactly what you want when you pass this life, when you go to the next life. You know, let your family members know. Don't be afraid to talk about that. You know, especially a lot of these young women that are having kids, you know, you got small kids, you know, talk to somebody and let them know, you know, who you want to raise your kids, you know, because you never know. You never know when your time is up, you know, and you don't want to worry who's going to raise your kids. So get that in order. You know, find out who you want to raise your kids if anything happened to you. But I really, really appreciate you guys for tuning in. And I like this little wig, y'all. It's my first time wearing a wig with a bang. You know, I like to switch up, y'all. I don't like to stay the same. But I'll see you guys next Thursday. But really, really think about what, you know, I talked about today. And also hit that share button, because everybody needs to sit down and discuss what are your plans. What do you want? What is your wishes when God say, okay, your time is up? You need to let your family members know. You need to let your kids know what are your wishes. But thank you guys for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. And y'all have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weekend. Peace. Y'all hear my husband? Okay. Bye. Bye-bye, y'all. Have a good day. Oh, thank you. Melissa is giving me Chinese vibes. I know, huh, girl? It's cute, though. It's cute. But thank you, guys. Y'all have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. But don't forget, make an appointment to talk to your family and friends what your wishes are. Don't forget. Put that in order. So nobody, family, should tear apart when they lose somebody. I feel like when a person loses a person to death, it should make people come closer together, not separate. So remember that. Have that discussion with your kids. Sit down with your kids. Sit down with your husband. Ask your husband what things he wants. What is his wishes? Ask your wife what is her wishes. What the things you want. You know, ask those questions. You know, what color you want. What song you want to be played. You know, do you want a large event? Do you want a small? Do you want intimate? You want private? Talk to them. Because you got to remember, it's not about you. It's about them. You know, it's about what they want. You know, so talk about those things. Don't be afraid to push that under the rug. We have to break the curse. We have to break the curse. You know, we can't continue doing the old way. We have to break the curse because we don't talk about those things. We don't. So make a promise to yourself today. I will not sweep that under the rug anymore. I am going to make an appointment with my kids. And I'm going to sit down, me, my husband, if you're married, if you're single, your kids. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about those things. We're going to write those things down. We're going to sign those things. We're going to get those things notarized so we know exactly what that person wants when it's time for them to cross over. So it won't be no misunderstanding, especially if you have to go through a moment of making a decision to unplug your family member. You definitely need to sit down and talk about that. And then if you are out there to that you're experiencing that right now, you know, for the ones out there that are experiencing this right now, that you might have to make a decision to unplug, you know, your family member. If you have sisters and brothers, allow them to be there. Allow them to express how they feel about that situation. But all of you guys have to come to a decision to make, you know, to do that. You know, you set a time, you know, because one thing about it, as long as you put everything on the table, you set a time to be here, you know, they know exactly the time to be there. If they feel like they're running late, they should be able to call and say, hey, I'm running late, give me a few more seconds. You know, do shit on an adult level. You know, don't be selfish. Don't think about yourself. Allow them to say their goodbyes. You know, allow them to have their moment. You know, you got to do that. You know, everybody, always get caught up in their feelings and be selfish. You cannot do that, especially if you got a lot of brothers and sisters. You can't be selfish like that. You can't do that. I don't care if one of the brothers and sisters never talked to their mom in a while. Okay, baby. I don't care if your brothers and sisters, haven't talked to their parents in a long time or whatever. Still, that's still their parent. You still give them that opportunity to say their goodbyes. If you call them and they say, "Hey, I'm not coming up there," they told you what they wasn't going to do, so you don't have to worry about it. So try to think about, what your parents will want, and stop being selfish and stop thinking about yourself. So please remember that. But please sit down and discuss those things. That's why I say a lot of times, there's a lot of things out there needs to be discussed, but people feel like, we shouldn't discuss those things. These days, you have to discuss everything, because now kids have access to the internet, TikTok, all of those little social medias, talk about everything. They do everything now. So nothing is private. So you still, you have to sit down and you have to talk to your kids. You got to let your kids know what's going on in the world. You can't sugarcoat shit to these kids no more. That shit doesn't work. You can't. Because you'll be surprised of the things that these kids know. You will be very, very, very surprised. But thank you guys for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to hit that share button if you feel like a person is going through something, they need to hear this, do that. And I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next Thursday. And like I said, I apologize that I did come on late, or whatever. But it's okay. Some things come up, that I have to handle. But one thing about it, I will make sure that I come on. If I don't come on a Thursday, I will let y'all know early in advance that I won't be on today or whatever. But thank you guys for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Peace and love.